It's great to see you all. Great to see those of you here in Los Angeles, and also for those of you who are viewing via live stream. I welcome you. I'm honored that you are here. For those of us who are here in Los Angeles, please introduce yourselves to the people who are around you, to your right and to your left and in front of you and behind you. All right. You ready? All right, please join with me. Let's take a deep breath and close our eyes. We see in the middle of our mind a little ball of golden light. We watch this light as it begins to grow larger and larger, until now it covers the entire inner vision of our mind. And we see for ourselves within this light a beautiful temple. We see a garden that surrounds the temple and a body of water that flows through the garden. We see that the inside of the temple is lit as well by this same beautiful golden light. And here we are, for we have been drawn together by the power and in the presence of God. We devote our time spent together, all of our relationships of one another, to Him. And we ask that His holiest Spirit be upon us, reaching into the deepest parts of every thought and every feeling, that we might be lifted up above and beyond the fears, limitations, and sorrows of this world to the love and to the endless peace that lay beyond. And so it is. Together we all say, Amen. I have been putting it out on social media and our website and so forth, what my topic would be for Monday nights. And we will be talking about relationships, as I had said. But when I did that, I had not realized that today is Memorial Day. So I want to pay due respect to this day. We, of course, remember and honor the something around 1.5 million American members of the armed forces who have died throughout our history in foreign wars. We speak here often about how important it is to be mindful and not mindless on these holidays. And I think Memorial Day is one that often gets lost in the barbecue and beer mentality of the holiday, and I think it's very important for us to take this day. It is right that it is a national holiday, and I think it's important that we take this day to remember, because with this remembrance comes deep significance, deep understanding if we allow it to, and also the unrest of meaningful questions. I'd like to read a couple of quotes to begin with. One is from Franklin Roosevelt, of course, the American president who led the United States during World War II. And if you have been to Washington, D.C., and you have been to the Roosevelt Memorial, you have seen these words, among others of his, etched on that memorial. And I find this very, very powerful quote. Roosevelt said, "I have seen war. I have seen war on land and sea. I have seen blood running from the wounded. I have seen men coughing out their gassed lungs. I have seen the dead in the mud. I have seen cities destroyed. I have seen 200 limping, exhausted men come out of line, the survivors of a regiment of 1,000 that went forward 48 hours before. I have seen children starving. I have seen the agony of mothers and wives. I hate war." To me, that has such power, not just because of the words and not just because of his sentiments, but because he felt it incumbent upon him, and I think most would agree, the necessity to fight and, of course, to help win World War II. The head of all Allied forces during that war, of course, was Dwight Eisenhower, who would later become President of the United States. And these words of his, I think, are also very powerful. He said, "I hate war as only a soldier who has lived it can, only as one who has seen its brutality, its futility, its stupidity." In 1977, 80% of our congressmen had had military service, and in 2013, only 19% had. So we are living at a time in America today where it is easier than ever to dissociate ourselves emotionally from the actual waging of war and the people who fight and the people who die every day. There is a prayer that Roosevelt wrote and gave over the radio at the beginning of the D-Day invasion. And during that invasion, 29,000 Americans died. Many others died from other countries as well. But 29,000 Americans died in the D-Day invasion alone. And when Eisenhower and Roosevelt knew that they were sending that invasion, sending these men out, they knew that even under the best of circumstances, i.e. taking those beaches, they knew without a doubt, as the men certainly in those first lines knew as well, who were shot before they ever even reached the beach. They knew the high probability that even in the quote-unquote best of circumstances, more people would die in that military operation than in any other military operation ever in the world. So I think given the fact that there are wars that America has fought that most of us would agree were necessary or righteous wars, and also the tortured history of our last few decades, from Vietnam to Iraq and so forth, where there's a lot of question about whether certain wars should have been fought, certain wars were mistakes or even crimes. I think it's incumbent upon us to remember on Memorial Day that for the individual soldier, that's who we honor. We honor those who fought and we honor those who died. And I think feel particular revulsion at the idea that any American was ever sent to die for no ultimate purpose. And that is what's left to you and me. And I believe that the greatest honor that we can give to those who have died in all wars, but certainly on this day, remembering American armed forces who have died in foreign wars, I think one of the ways we honor them today is not only in prayer that their spirits be at peace, but also doing everything that we can to diminish the possibility and the probability that this kind of thing will continue and more useless deaths occur. So let's say a prayer right now for those who have, the men and women who have died in foreign wars, the United States throughout our history, World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, smaller wars, Spanish, etc. And of course, even though it wasn't a civil war, it wasn't a foreign war, let's include in our prayers those who died in the Civil War. Dear God, we remember tonight those who have died as members of the armed forces of the United States, who have died throughout the world, sometimes, dear God, and most of the time, the most horrific deaths. For we know that at the deepest level, they did this for us. And we commit ourselves, as they have committed themselves, to wage war effectively. We commit tonight, in their honor and in their memory, to, in whatever way possible, wage peace effectively. That the greatest honor might be showed their souls, that someday, somehow, through your grace and through your miracle, war shall be no more. Bless them all, dear God. Bless their souls. May they rest in peace. And so it is, we say. Amen. Okay, tonight we are going to talk about relationships. And several weeks ago, we talked about relationships, and I want to go further with the conversation that we had. One of the things that we were talking about is this idea, the principles of the Course in Miracles being very simple, they're not difficult, they're just very different. And the idea in the Course in Miracles is that every problem that we have, no matter what form it takes, it amounts to our separation from God, that we really only have one problem. There is only one problem, and there is only one answer. So our problems take many different forms, the issues of life take many different forms, but there is one answer, and that is a consciousness of the sacred. That is the consciousness of God. That is a realization within our hearts and within our minds of a higher sense of identity for what human beings are and a higher sense of purpose for why we are here and what we are doing with everything in our lives. A Course in Miracles says that there is nothing in our experience of the world that is holy or unholy, except as to the purpose ascribed to it by the mind. So anything that we experience, that we surrender to God and ask that it be used for His holy purposes, is holy. So I want to ask you about all of the, for instance, romantic relationships you have ever been in, or the romantic relationship you're in now. When was the last time you surrendered it to God and prayed that it be used for His holy purposes? Obviously, this is somewhat amusing because when we think of romantic love particularly, we usually do not think of it in sacred terms. And yet anything that we leave out of the sacred context is something that we are leaving out of a perspective of deep sanity. Because the sacred perspective is the sane perspective. The problem with the world, as Gandhi said, is that humanity is not in its right mind. Freud calls neurosis separation from self. And the problem with this world is that the world is dominated by experiences that are reflections of a consciousness of fear rather than a consciousness of love. And so while we are tempted to try to dismantle those circumstances or dissolve those circumstances or fight those circumstances, ultimately the only real healing of those circumstances is a healing of the mind that produced them. Otherwise, whether the issue is relationships or anything else, we will simply manifest once again in another way or with other people the same situation in terms of the lesson that it represents. And the only lesson that we are ever confronted with is the opportunity to live on earth as we already dwell in heaven. Heaven is an awareness of our oneness. And hell is what the ego would make of the present. And the way the ego mind makes our present and also makes our relationships hell is by always tempting us to think of ourselves as separate from other people. Now, on a physical plane, on a material plane, of course we are separate from each other. But the consciousness of the sacred is a consciousness which extends our perception beyond what the physical senses perceive. So my physical senses reveal to me that you are separate from me, and in time and space, of course, this is true. But the entire three-dimensional realm of time and space, according to the Course, in any deep metaphysical teaching, the realm of time and space as we know it, the three-dimensional realm, is itself, as Einstein called it, an illusion of consciousness. This illusion that I am separate from others, this illusion that I am separate from God, this illusion that I am an isolated being separate from the rest of the universe, as evidenced by my physical body, leads me to a deep existential despair. In fact, a deep hysteria at the idea that I am alone in this big, huge universe. The ego mind, which posits that separation to begin with, then tells me that the way to transcend my loneliness, the way to heal my separation, is to find someone out there who will complete me in all the ways that I feel incomplete. I feel incomplete, however, only because I have forgotten who I am. Therefore, I am believing that I am incomplete. I am looking to another person to complete me. And because my hysteria and my angst is so great, I am committed to lassoing that person in whatever way possible, in whatever way necessary, to be with me because I am so desperately lonely. Now, most of this is not going on, the Course in Miracles would argue, on a conscious level. When, however, we realize that we are already complete in God, we are not looking to someone else to complete us, realizing that we are complete. If I am looking to another person to complete me, I am likely to attract someone who is looking to me to complete them, as though I don't have enough to do already. Now, if, however, we see ourselves as complete people, then to that extent, we are not looking to someone else to complete us. Rather, we most easily attract someone else who is already complete. What then would be the purpose of the relationship? The purpose of the relationship then is not that we complete each other, but that together we glorify God. Now be with me here. The universe, as we discuss often, is intentional. Its intent is the complete enlightenment of the human species, the complete enlightenment of all things. But that enlightenment process is a gnarly one at times because of that breach that exists between the truth of who we are, our divine truth, and what we manifest on the earth. This is another way of saying most of us, all of us, except for any enlightened masters who perhaps are walking the earth, are wounded. So if my job is to remember that I am a complete person already, does that, and then to attract someone who is in that state of completion, does that mean then that I can't be in relationship until I am healed of all my wounds? Not at all. The purpose of the relationship is to further the glorification of God, which means the evolution of the self-actualization of love. And as we talk about often, according to A Course in Miracles, relationships are assignments. Assignments made by the Holy Spirit, another word for the natural intelligence, the mind of God, by which people are brought together who represent maximal learning opportunity. Now, that maximal learning opportunity means that in relationship with you, there is much to learn. Now, if in relationship with you, there is much to learn, how does the learning take place? The way learning takes place is through a kind of emotional detox. Just as a detox occurs on the physical level, a detox also occurs on an emotional level. Things have to come up in order to be released. Now, my ego mind is looking to you to be that special person that will answer all my needs as I define them. The Holy Spirit knows I don't have any needs except to experience myself as I was created by God. The ego mind is looking for what the Course in Miracles calls a special relationship. And an image in the Course that's very powerful is where it talks about a gold Baroque gilt frame. And that frame has diamonds in it and rubies in it. And the Course in Miracles says that from an ego perspective, we are just walking around with a frame, seeing who we can get to fill it. Who might fit my picture to put inside my frame? A Course in Miracles says that those rubies are our blood. And those diamonds are our tears. Because what we're really seeking to do is to use people to fit our pictures and to fulfill our needs as we define them, when in fact our greatest need is to know that in God we have no needs other than to experience the fullness of ourselves as we are. The holy relationship, the Course in Miracles says, because remember, there are two aspects of mind. There's the ego mind, which is the mind of fear, the mind which is always tempting us to see ourselves as separate from others. And then there is the mind of spirit, which is the mind that is always guiding us towards a realization of our oneness with others. The ego mind is vigilant around relationships. The ego's dictate in love, the Course says, is seek but do not find. The ego mind has us always seeking and never finding. The spiritual mind, however, leads us not to the special relationships of the ego, but rather to what the Course in Miracles calls the holy relationship. Now, in the holy relationship, I am not looking to you to be perfect according to the dictates of what my ego says is necessary. But rather, I realize that we were brought together for holy purposes. That holy purpose is the glorification of God, which means mutual soul growth, which means, by definition, that what you need to learn in order to grow will come up here. And what I need in order to grow will come up here. Now, in practical terms, the lesson you need in order to grow takes the form of your face that might not be so beautiful today. My ego mind, upon seeing your wounded places, wants out of here. But my holy mind knows that to the extent to which a sacred container surrounds this relationship itself, as the Course in Miracles says, is the laboratory of the Holy Spirit, a kind of hospital for the soul. You are here in order to be healed of your wounds, and I am here in order to be healed of mine. Life is hard, and the purpose of relationships is that we might give comfort to one another. The purpose of relationship is that we might serve each other's growth. The purpose of relationships is that we might be holy companion to one another. A particularly significant issue on the planet today. The Course in Miracles says that there has been no mass awakening. It says that in the Bible, it says that Adam fell asleep, and nowhere does it say that he woke up. And so humanity, from a Course perspective, has been asleep for a very long time, asleep to who and what we actually are. There has been no mass awakening, but it is time to inaugurate that mass awakening. The Course in Miracles also says an idea grows stronger when it is shared. So we are being led to each other right now in very profound ways. We are being led into partnership. We are being led into association. We are being led into relationships that give us the opportunity to do more together than we could do apart. This is an extremely important time to be there for one another in order that we might maximize the possibility of an emergent light so great as to turn around the evolutionary arc, which at this point looks like a downward devolutionary spiral by which humanity seems so intent on self-destruction. But if we look at relationships as we are taught by the ego to look at most things, simply as something that we want in order to satisfy our needs as we define them, then we go into relationships with exactly the opposite perspective, exactly the opposite energy, exactly the opposite attitudes which enable us to cultivate them. Now, I certainly have lived my own life, and in addition to living my own life and being a student of the course, I see so much, and I have counseled so many and done so many seminars and so forth. And I see a lot of pain in this area, just as I've experienced a lot of pain in this area. And my heart particularly goes out to young women who have a limitation, a biological limitation that the rest of us do not have. And this idea of the ticking clock, the idea of that date past which childbearing is probably no longer an option, the idea of young women who want very much to find relationships within which that reality might occur, and the desperation that so often fits in when people feel that they try and they try and they try, but they simply cannot find a way, cannot find a partner to satisfy the needs as they define them. Well, first of all, we're living at a time when nothing is as it was before, where everything is here for a spiritual purpose. And because relationships are here for a spiritual purpose, a lot of the thinking that we have had about relationships and why they even exist is changing as well. One of the things that I have seen in my own relationships, not just with men but in life, is that my mistake in any kind of relationship has tended to be my mistakes in every kind of relationship. A Course in Miracles says that there is no love but God's. A lot of times, the basics of forgiveness, the basics of mercy, the basics of generosity, the basics of compassion are as much the issue whether we're talking about a friend, whether we're talking about one of our children, whether we're talking about our own parents, whether we are talking about employers or employees, or whether we are talking about our romantic partners. As long as our questioning remains stuck at what do you want in a relationship and is this person giving it to you, we are on an ego track of pain and destruction. So the first thing we want to do is not simply try to analyze where we think we might be forming barriers to love. That is a powerful part of the Course. Very early, it's in the introduction, where it says, your job is not to seek for love. Your job is to seek all the barriers you hold against its coming. So, as I said, what I've seen in myself is that my barriers to love in one kind of relationship would be my barriers to love in any kind of relationship. And that's why learning spiritual principles is the greatest tool for the enlivening and the enlightenment of any kind of relationship, because it has to do with the principles that most easily take us into the place of our own deepest self. If I am in a place of my own deepest self, as the Course in Miracles says, other people hear you on the level you speak from, and other people are attracted to you at the level on which you dwell. Now, I want to say this again because I think it's so important. Other people are attracted to you at the level on which you dwell. And the level on which you dwell has nothing to do with externals. Externals are important, and externals can be fun, and externals can be part of the glory, and externals can also be part of what sets it up to begin with. But externals are not that which ultimately cultivate and maintain good relationship. Because almost as soon as we are with someone, the lessons will begin. And the things will start to happen by which we are forced to recognize the imperfection, can you believe it, in another human being. And as we see that imperfection in another human being, how we dwell in that universe by which we are both together, as I often talk about how when a gemologist or jeweler is seeking to make a ruby smooth or a diamond smooth or a sapphire or an emerald, the way this occurs is that the rough jewels are rubbed up against each other, and that is how they become smooth. And that's what is happening in relationship. But this is the problem. If we're not working on our issues, then what happens is that they will get brought up in relationship, and there is that art form, isn't there? On one hand, knowing that none of us are perfect and all of us are here to be healed, and on the other hand, we are accountable for our behavior. So on one hand, in a holy relationship, it is understood that your best will not always be on display, and my best will not always be on display. But what is sacred when the sacred consciousness dominates is the realization that two people are trying. That two people are trying, that's number one, and that even though there is accountability as is appropriate, there is also a sense of mercy and compassion because two people understand that that's what's happening. Now, along with this issue of both people knowing that our wounds will be on display because the whole purpose of the relationship is that we be healed. And in addition to the realization that part of loving someone is having mercy and having compassion, because after all, these issues do get brought up, is the idea that we are here to serve one another. Too many times we think that this is some codependent sentiment, that we are here to serve one another. But in fact, we are here to serve one another's growth, because we only get to keep what we give away, A Course in Miracles says. Therefore, if we are really serious about relationship, and we are serious about relationship as a context for the glorification of God, if we are serious about a relationship as a way to further the intentionality and the intentions of a loving universe which seeks to foster the higher evolution of all people, then of course the purpose we have in any relationship is to be that space in which another person can thrive more easily. You know, it's so interesting because there's so much conscious conversation today about parenthood. There's so much conscious conversation about being very alert to what your child is going through in the first grade, in the second grade, in the fifth grade, in high school. There's so much conscious conversation about really tracking where your child is. But there's not enough conversation, it seems to me, about tracking where your mate is, about understanding where your lover is, about really trying to deeply discern and deeply understand what another person is going through. Now, why is that? What is the reason for the fact that far too often we forget to think about what they are going through? Because we are so obsessed with what we are going through. We are so obsessed with where this relationship, quote unquote, might be going, that we literally forget to experience where the relationship is today. Now, some of you might be thinking, oh, this is really a setup for just staying in bad relationships. This is just a setup for all kinds of codependent attachment. This is just kind of a setup to forgive things that absolutely should not be forgiven. Well, certainly the Course in Miracles says all should be forgiven, but not everything should be tolerated. Quite the opposite. It's actually an attitudinal context by which we more easily attract into our experience people who are playing the game on that same level. And that's why a conversation such as we're having tonight, in which we are seating within our own consciousness and within the larger conversation of our culture, to the extent to which we are part of that, a higher frequency of conversation about relationships is so important. And this applies equally to men, and it applies equally to women. One of the things that I see, and applies equally to gay and applies equally to straight as well. None of those issues of separation would have any bearing whatsoever on these principles. One of the things that I have witnessed, and one of the things that I have heard so much from people, and I feel, you know, my parents, the older I have gotten, the more I have appreciated what my parents had going on. And in many, many ways have not only understood my mother better, but appreciated my mother much more. And I didn't know when I was growing up. I didn't know from people being mean to each other. And I certainly didn't know from my father being mean to my mother or my mother being mean to him. But it was more than that. I witnessed how much they proactively sought to build each other up. And I see too little of that in the world today. And at the same time that I, in my own personal journey, realized how important those things were, I have watched the culture move in a direction of dismissing how important those things are. How, when you woke up this morning, as we were talking about last time, we had this discussion, for those of you who are married, for those of you who are in partnership, did you wake up this morning and pray to be a blessing on the ones that you love? And once again, that you did it in your work, good, we talk about that. That you did it with your children, good, we talk about that. But I think this romantic context is so interesting because the ego is particularly sly about keeping romance out of this. The idea that your prayer is, may I be a blessing on his life, may I be a blessing on her life. May this relationship be a context in which he more fully becomes the man he is capable of being, in which my presence helps that occur. May this be a context in which she more easily becomes the woman she is capable of being. May my presence in her life help that occur. And one of the simple things we begin with is telling each other how great we are. You know, I remember once when my daughter was very little and I was telling her how fantastic she was, very little, and my mother was on the phone and said, Marianne, watch what you say to that child. And I knew what she was saying. She was saying, you don't want her to get a swelled head. And I said to her, well, I do tell her she's fantastic all the time, but I also tell her all her friends are too. I don't tell her she's any more fantastic than any other little kid. I just say all little kids are fantastic. And you're here, and I'm your mom, so I'm going to tell you today how fantastic you are. But it took me a long time to give the same mercy to people. I mean, what was she going to do? Well, how hard was her life going to be today? She was going to go to kindergarten. And yet someone else who was going to have a lot harder time that day, he had a lot more to face than kindergarten. And for whatever reason, I forgot or didn't see the appropriateness or didn't see the meaning of actually building him up and making him know that there was someone who believes in him. This is, we talk about self-confidence in children and how children need self-esteem. At what age do we stop needing it? At what age do we stop needing somebody, not just who has our back when we have a problem, but has our back and our sides and above us and below us and an angelic presence every single day of our lives? And I think when you start to have this conversation in your head, I'm sure many of you realize, when I've thought about relationships, I haven't included that part. Because the ego would not have us include that part. This has absolutely nothing to do with age. This has absolutely nothing to do with sex or sexuality. And at the deepest level, it has nothing to do with romance or any other form of relationship. But it does have to do with what the Course in Miracles calls making every relationship a holy encounter. We are so busy in a culture like ours. We are so tempted by things that are ultimately meaningless that we swerve constantly on any given day away from the opportunities for miracles and the opportunities for love that is the only thing that matters in this world. Anybody that we know, any relationship that we are in, from a Course in Miracles perspective, its purpose is holy. Its purpose is that we, within the relationship, might be a beneficent force. This is not fuzzy love. This is not wimpy love. And this is not gooey love. This is fierce love. This is authentic and it is honest. It doesn't mean that we never say anything that might be a little difficult for someone to hear, because particularly in romantic relationships, that just might be the case, no less than in parenting or any other, or being an employer or anything else. But what we are responsible for is how we say something. And that's the essence, isn't it, of nonviolent communication. I know so often when I'm counseling couples, I'll say, what would help me here is if one of you tells me while you are here, with the other person not interrupting, and would the other person please tell me why you're here without interrupting, right? And then I feel that I'm brought up to speed. And then at that point, what I see a lot is that my role in the situation is to maintain and secure the emotional safety of both people. And often I will find myself saying to one or the other, could you please say what you just said without it being an attack? Could you please relanguage what you just said? Your point might have validity. Your issue might be legitimate, but your delivery was an attack. Your delivery was a blame. Your delivery was a judgment. So how deep can you go with a person if, number one, you're not allowed to say what are sometimes uncomfortable truths, but on the other hand, how deep can we go with someone unless we practice the importance of kindness? And that's why I mentioned last time we were having a discussion about relationships, how I had read about a very old couple who were asked by someone, what's the secret to your 50 or 60-year marriage? And they said, be nice. I think that we are a generation which were actually groomed for unbelievable verbal self-indulgence. We were groomed. We were almost taught that it was a virtue to say whatever we want to say whenever we want to say it. And one of the most powerful communications is often silence. And for women, this is such an issue because the feminine and the masculine has to do with the state of doing versus the state of being. I think we're all masculine and we're all feminine, but depending on what your relationship is, there are some underlying dynamics that have to do with, on the overarching level, who plays the masculine here and who plays the feminine. And when this is worked out, whoever is playing the deeper feminine principle within the relationship had best come to understand the virtue of silence and the virtue of a state of being. You know, here at my lectures, I am the masculine in my relationship with you. That's the social contract. I'm the generator here. I am saying what I think. That's the social contract. That's what we are here for. And then I give and you give back. But I've certainly learned in my life, my work with you, it doesn't work with guys, right? Because that is not, it is, while it might be within this context appropriate, there is an aspect of myself as a heterosexual woman where an experience of a very different aspect of my personality and a very different aspect of who I am at a very deep level is called for in order to provide the space of what we often call the divine feminine. But the divine feminine, you know, the goddess doesn't mean much unless she is channeled through real women. And that's a problem, I think. I think that Americans are wounded. I think there are scars in America that I don't see the same way in other cultures that I visited. Women in our womanhood are scarred in our culture, and men in their manhood are scarred in this culture. That is not to say that every woman is scarred. It is not to say that every man is scarred. But it is to say that there are some psychic wounds that seem to run through the psychic bloodstream of our society that I think do emerge from a kind of flawed aspect of the feminism of the 1970s. I certainly consider myself a feminist, but I also understand that during that time, in many ways, we came to suppress the feminine in the name of feminism. And so what we became in many ways were men of sorts. And as Pat Allen talks about how two masculine cancel each other out and two feminine cancel each other out, this is true in gay relationships, this is about a psychic relationship, as true for gay people as for straight people. It hurt a lot of American women because we became men unknowingly. And if we are in our masculine, a man cannot be masculine in our presence. And so he either has to give up his masculine or leave. And I think it's also true that men were very scarred by that, because I think a lot of American men became afraid at that time that any masculine move, any masculine statement, any masculine reality will be perceived. And sometimes it was projected onto them that that behavior was macho, that in another culture or from another perspective might merely be seen as masculine. And this has hurt us. It has hurt us as individuals, it has hurt us in our relationships, it has hurt us in our families. And from a spiritual perspective, it is hurting us because it is keeping us from all the miraculous opportunities that we have to join with each other in such a way as to synergize and increase the maximal opportunities of what your life force can provide and what my life force can provide. You know, a friend called me today. And he was asking me, this is just a friend I hadn't seen in many years, a great guy, and he was talking about something he's got going professionally, and he was sort of asking me a favor, but he kept justifying it. I could tell he was uncomfortable, almost like it had to be a sales pitch. And I said to him, listen, this is all one big revolution of love going on the planet today. We don't have to apologize to each other. This is rather a time when if you call me, what can I do? If I call you, what can I do? That's how we're going to make this whole thing go faster. That's how we're going to rev up the energy by which all of us are going to be able to get there together. That's what's going on now. What's going on now is the realization that you by yourself can only go so far, professionally and personally. You by yourself can only go so far, professionally and personally. It's not from A Course in Miracles perspective as though you're more advanced than me or I'm more advanced than you. It's not like that. You had a different childhood than I had. You've had different life experience than I've had. So there might be areas where you are strong and I'm still weaker than you. And there might be areas in the same relationship where I am strong and you're a little weaker than me. You had a different family than I had. I had a different family than you had. You've had different life experience than I have had. And so we are brought together where we match in teaching, learning, opportunity, and it is understood. Where you stumble a little bit, let me help you. But don't worry about it, because tomorrow I'm going to stumble a little bit and you're going to help me. Now, what do we do with ideas like this? Well, we can have in life whatever we are willing to be. This is not about going out and making something happen. It is about realizing within ourselves a certain energetic template. Remember, everybody knows everything unconsciously. You walk into a room, people know, although they do not know it consciously, where you are coming from. And so as you begin in your life, first of all with relationships you're already in, but also in relationships that you might wish to have. If you are willing to, in your own mind, remember, you have no tool at your disposal more powerful than your mind. Build that temple within your mind. Build that temple of romantic relationships. Build that temple of any kind of relationship you are either in or you desire. Know that there are absolutely no limits. And see yourself standing within that temple in a place of high romantic and otherwise relationship realization. That you have risen to that place where you are ready to glorify together with another human being the purposes of God on earth. You know, speaking of young women and young people who can have children and so forth, obviously, the planet will not, the human race will not continue if there are not younger people who are having babies. It's a beautiful thing. But we're also living at a time on the planet where no matter how many babies are born, the human race will not continue if we do not give birth to some more wisdom. And sometimes, whereas the younger people have it more together physically in terms of giving birth to children, sometimes older people, because of accumulated experience, have it more together in terms of wisdom that is possible. And so the younger you are, the more you know and the more you have to give about some things. And the older you are, the more you know and the more you have to give about other things. Now, just as, you know how sometimes like traditional Christians will say, the purpose of a relationship is procreation. Like the only reason for marriage is to give birth to children. Well, from a metaphysical perspective, you really see that line in a different way. It is true that the purpose of relationship is procreation, but that procreation is a much more expanded issue than just the birth of a child. But any relationship that works, that glorifies God, that reaches the highest evolutionary plateau, is one in which the understanding is that we are in this in order to procreate together. Now, the other person, in the sense of you're going to be a better person because of this, and I'm going to be a better person because of this. And the space that's held in whatever way that God reveals himself, just as God reveals himself in your mind, and God reveals himself in another person's mind, God also reveals himself within our relationships. We talk all the time about how God already has in his mind a template and the architecture by which you would become the person that is the highest creative potential for this lifetime. Now realize that God also has that same template and that same architecture for every relationship. So we surrender our relationships just like we surrender our lives. May they be what God would have them be, in order that they might do what God would have them do. And then we begin to see our relationships not only as a grand adventure, but as a spiritual adventure, by which we are being a space, creating with another person a space in which they are more likely to become who they are capable of being. It is more probable that I will become who I'm capable of being. Therefore, we can join at a level higher than either of us could have been alone, that together we might do great things. And ultimately, that creation and what emerges from that, just as in a younger person, that creation is often the birth of a child, and how miraculous and beautiful is that. The birth of a child is only one of the great miracles of God. Is only one of the ways that nature furthers life. So no matter who we are, no matter what our age, no matter what our sex, sexuality, or anything, we want to be open and alert to the relationships that God places in our lives. Because relationships, as I said earlier, are the laboratories of the Holy Spirit. We do not, from a Course in Miracles perspective, we do not find God separate from finding each other, but rather we find God through our relationships with each other. And when we develop that namaste consciousness, that every time we see anyone, every time we think of anyone, every time we greet anyone, we seek to develop the mental habit that the love in me salutes the love in you, the God in me salutes the God in you. May your day be blessed in some way because you encountered me. Now, that doesn't mean that you are sacrificing your own good for the good of others, quite the opposite, because, as I said, from a Course perspective, only what you give away do you get to keep. So the Course in Miracles says we actually become generous out of self-interest. We seek to be there for others as a way of being there for ourselves. And this lifts us up. It lifts us up beyond the neurotic patterns and the craziness and all of those things that are part and parcel of the ego-based relationships. Does this mean we do not go through trials? Absolutely not. Does this mean we don't go through challenges? Absolutely not. Does this mean we don't cry at times? Absolutely not, because it takes us more deeply into those true places where we really live. But when we are going through everything as part of a context where we know that this is all so that we might more fully understand not only our own destiny as individuals, but the destiny of a relationship itself, then not only do we find ourselves more fully becoming the people that we are capable of being, but we come to realize that was the purpose of the relationship. We come to realize that we wish that for the other person, even as much as we wish it for ourselves, and we begin to see creative things emerge from our relationships, which are genuinely miraculous. The birth of a child is one form, and there are many, many others as well. So I want in our meditation, and Richard, is Richard here today? Richard's not here. Okay, we're going to do without Richard today, the meditation. But in this meditation, I would like you to take, the Course in Miracles says, You were not asked to have no thoughts that are not pure. You were only asked to have no thoughts that you would keep. The holy instant, the Course in Miracles says, is where we just go and say, God, take my thoughts. And some of you might be thinking, well, I hate relationships. You might be thinking, I'm bad at relationships. You might be thinking, other people have wronged me in relationships. You might be thinking, I'm damaged goods in relationships. You might be thinking, this is the last thing I want to talk about or hear about in relationships. You might be thinking that none of this has anything to do with you. And from a Course perspective, if you think it has nothing to do with you, it probably does. Because, as the Course, as I've said all evening, the issues that are at play in any one context of relationship are the same as every context. These principles apply to our romantic relationships, they apply to our work relationships, they apply to our relationship with every single person. Because the form of a relationship is not what matters. What matters is the content of a relationship. Adam and Eve were naked but unembarrassed. That doesn't mean they were physically naked but unembarrassed, although they might have been. That of itself may or may not be difficult for you. But the real task, the real challenge in relationship is to be naked but unembarrassed emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually. This is often called authenticity. But it is a fierce authenticity, and that it is not just about telling you how I really feel, but it is about making the effort to become who I really am. So we are going to build for ourselves in this temple tonight the temple of deep relationship. And we are going to invite anybody who is meant for us this lifetime to enter here. And we are going to pray that God remove the barriers, the hard places in front of our hearts, the character defects, the personality characteristics, whatever they are. And in most of our lives, it's not like we don't know what they are. But sometimes we have not deeply faced what they are, and most importantly, we have not asked God to remove them. And so I don't care who you are, I don't care what your situation in life, if you are a human being, which we all are, you feel lonely without the companionship of other human beings. We need each other. We want each other. We desire right relationship. And the fact that we don't often enough have right relationship means that we are held back in our own lives from being all that we could be and doing all that we could do to play our part in the salvation of the world. This is an urgent moment in the history of the world. This is a time of all hands on deck. This is time for all of us to do everything possible to become who we are capable of being so that we can do what we are capable of doing, so that together we can turn around a trajectory of fear that only if turned to love will mean that humanity continues to thrive. So in this area, as in every other, we pray for miracles. Let's do that now. We see in the middle of our mind a little ball of golden light, and we watch this light as it begins to grow larger and larger, until now it covers the entire inner vision of our mind. And we see for ourselves within this light a beautiful temple. We see a garden that surrounds the temple and a body of water that flows through the garden. We see that the inside of the temple is lit by this same beautiful golden light. And here, this night, this temple is dedicated to our relationships with all other people. And we see for ourselves within this temple the presence of the Holy Spirit of God in whatever form that presence appears to us. And that presence represents the power of God. And now, standing before this presence, we identify within ourselves and we present to this presence all the things within us and within our lives that we know keep love at bay. It might be a certain kind of personality characteristic. It might be negativity or neediness, controllingness or anger. It might be that we manipulate. It might be that we are dishonest. It might be that we let fear rule. It might be that we do not actively appreciate other people enough. It might be that we are selfish. It might be something about our external environment. As we now allow this process to occur, the illuminations take place. We see all the things we need to see. And now remember, all we need do is surrender these things to God. As you see any aspect of your life or any aspect of your personality that you now see as a way that you keep love of any kind at bay, now silently say within your heart, "Dear God, please take this from me. Take from me my negativity. Take from me my sarcasm. Take from me my selfishness. Take from me my addiction. Take from me all that is not truly me, that I might present myself to others naked, unembarrassed, and available to love." We think now of all the people who have been in our past, and we honor everyone we have ever known as part of the journey that brought us here. Knowing that we can have a grievance or a miracle, but we cannot have both. We surrender to God our grievances towards anyone or anything. We place all of our relationships, past or present, into the hands of God. We pray that these relationships be lifted above and beyond all walls of separation. May a great wave of forgiveness wash us clean. May others see only the innocence in us. May we see only the innocence in others. May those whom we have known and who we know see only the innocence in themselves. And may we see only the innocence in ourselves. We apologize in our hearts for all the ways that we have ever hurt or betrayed anyone. And we atone for our mistakes. We apologize in our hearts for all the ways that we have hurt or betrayed ourselves. and we atone for our mistakes. We place our past and all of our past relationships in the hands of God. We honor the love that was given us and the love that we gave others. All else now dissolving into the nothingness from whence it came. And now we pray that our hearts be open so wide, and that the light of God within us shine so brightly as to prepare us for the deepest love. May who we are be a space that naturally attracts healthy love, wise love, beautiful love, as a blessing on ourselves and all the world. We send our love out to bless everyone and everything. We pray for the capacity to see beyond the illusions of the world, that we might be conduits of God's forgiveness. May all relationships and all circumstances that serve the purpose of our own rising up in glory as God works through us now fall naturally in our path, that we might be to others and others might be to us conduits of love, conduits of peace, and conduits of joy. We pray that the Holy Spirit of God be upon every aspect of our thoughts and feelings, every relationship and every circumstance in our lives, that we might become more whole and be more holy. For therein lies the endless light that removes all darkness in ourselves and in the world. We place ourselves in service, praying that the Holy Spirit use us in whatever way to be a blessing on all of life. And so it is, together, we all say, Amen. Okay, that was them. Okay. I'm finding that much of what A Course in Miracles asks us to do or be seems challenging while going through a divorce. The situation and lawyers ask that I have an agenda and a battle plan so that I don't lose out financially. I'm having to make major decisions while I'm wounded and confused. How can I fight for what is mine from a place of love? I have already lost a future with my best friend and love of 22 years, and I do not want to succumb to anger and fear and lose my way completely. Your advice would be appreciated. Well, first of all, I just want to take this moment for all of us to, I'm sure that the woman who wrote this is not the only one. It's a big issue. It's a real big issue because people who are going through a divorce, there are often things like this, financial things. And I've seen people make mistakes both ways. I've seen people make a mistake of being too hard and unforgiving, and I've seen people make a mistake of thinking, well, if I just give him everything and don't watch out for myself, maybe he'll love me, and that turns out not to have been such a good idea either. So I think what we need to do is to pray for Carrie, this woman, and to know that she's probably not the only one going through this. And the very fact, Carrie, that you are asking the question means that your intention is that God's will be done. So let's remember this. It's a win-win universe. And your relationship with this person, remember, the marriage is over. But the Course in Miracles says that all who meet will someday meet again until the relationship becomes holy. So the fact that the marriage is over from a Course in Miracles perspective does not mean that the relationship is over. It might feel that way now, but because there's obviously deep feeling and pain and so forth. But as we place the relationship in God's hands, we're asking that it be lifted to the level of divine right order. And we want to lovingly release, but to know that you can afford to lovingly release because you know that it is not the end of the relationship, it is merely a change. The content is still there, the form is changing. Now, the very fact that you're all this business about, if you even have a lawyer that's using language like an agenda and a battle plan so you don't lose out financially, that means there's some money involved. So obviously this would be a difficult thing right now. So what you want to remember is that your love and forgiveness does not mean just whatever, I just want to be in love and forgiveness and blah, 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 blah. That's not what it necessarily means. It means that I have to be in love and forgiveness to find my sanity. And I will call back the lawyer when I am sane. Because when you are in a state that's not your peace, and that doesn't mean that you're not in heartbreak, but you can be in heartbreak and sanity at the same time. So we join with you, Carrie, in placing this in God's hands. And I'm sure that with all the people watching on live stream, Carrie's probably not the only person here going through a divorce. And this is, it's a painful one. So let's join with Carrie and pray that this be lifted up and that from that place she will make all wise decisions. You're very right, Carrie. You don't want to be at the behest of any professional consulting you who's coming from that adversarial position. And there are, you know, so many people now who are divorced done a different way and all that. I think Debbie Ford wrote a book about it. But still, there are all those worldly issues you have to decide. So you can absolutely let your consultants, in this case your lawyers, know I'm not coming from that place, but I want you to know you're not coming from that place does not necessarily mean what, you know, some people might think it means. You will actually take care of yourself more responsibly when you know that it is a win-win universe and that which is righteous is one in which everyone is treated fairly, and you will be guided as to what that means. Okay? Sound cool? All right, let's pray with Carrie and anybody else going through a divorce. And also, before we do this, Jeff, would you do me a favor? Would you please get me a copy of Illuminata? There's a prayer ceremony of divorce in there. Thank you, darling. You can find it in the table of contents. Carrie, you know what? We're going to wait and say the prayer because I want to read to you this from my book, Illuminata. Okay, dear Marianne, I've been studying the Course for a few years now. The deeper I seem to go with it, the more active and aware I become of the current conditions of the world. Corruption in politics, inequality, climate change, waste factors, our food supply, the list goes on. I feel a strong calling to become active now more than ever. The problem that I'm coming across right now is that the deeper I involve myself actively in these areas and the more knowledge I gain on these topics, the more fearful, angry, and frustrated I become. Is that my ego? It's not stopping me from getting involved, but I am finding love. I'm not finding love amongst it all, and I'm carrying the upset into my daily life. How have you been so actively involved in world matters without overwhelm of the suffering? How have you stayed grounded? If you can help me, I would appreciate it. Okay, so this is the big issue, and I've certainly seen there's been a real journey that I have taken within myself, to be sure. If you are looking at the state of the world today and you're not grieving, you're not looking. But if we want to remember that from what the Course in Miracles says, love produces miracles. And anytime we are not in a state of love, we are deflecting the miracle. So the anger that we can be so tempted into by seeing corruption and by seeing all these quite fascistic, I mean, that's just a description, tendencies in places where they should not be. It can be very tempting. But we want to remember that when we are in that place, we are not helping. And from a spiritual perspective, like I said, if you're not grieving, you're not looking. But from a spiritual perspective, if you're not also rejoicing in the possibility of miracles, then you're not seeing the whole picture. And the whole picture is that it is, in a certain sense, the 11th hour on the planet today, but it's not midnight yet. There's a revolution of love. There's a revolution of love that is already occurring, and we just need to do everything possible in our lives to step it up. There's a saying from an old Jewish theologian from centuries ago, and I'm going to butcher this. I don't remember the exact words, but I wish I had it. I'm so sorry. It's something along the line of, you were not asked to complete the task of repairing in the world, but neither are you allowed to desist from the effort. And that's very powerful, this thought that we may or may not, fix everything in our time, but dear God, make me not someone who's sitting out the process. And I think that, it's kind of like when you have a child and certain things happen in the house, or you think might be happening, drugs, alcohol, or whatever, and you just make it very clear that will not be happening here. It's because you love that child. And that's how we have to become about our country and about our planet, that certain things will not be happening here. But I know in my life, and I think we all know, when it's coming from anger, it does not help. It only makes you popular with people who already agree with you. As Martin Luther King said, you have very little morally persuasive power with people who can feel your underlying contempt. So if you disagree wholeheartedly with people on the left, or you disagree wholeheartedly with people on the right, your job, if you don't like people on the right, is to ask God to show you the innocence and the love in people on the right. And if you have that about people on the left, your job is to ask God to show you that about people on the left. And I've written about that. My book, Healing the Soul of America. So I know in myself, and we all know, when I fall into that kind of a place, I'm not serving God, I'm not serving anyone, and most importantly, I'm not serving the effort at change. Okay. Did you find the divorce thing? Okay, Carrie, I hope this is helpful to you. Okay, this is the ceremony of divorce in my book, Illuminata. Oh, wait, this is too long. Okay, this is more than I thought. So, Carrie, I would, and anyone who is dealing with this, I would have you look at my book, Illuminata. There is a ceremony of divorce in there. And I hope that the prayers will be helpful. Right now, let's just pray for all those who are going through this. Dear God, we join with this woman and anyone, any man or woman who is now going through the experience of divorce, heartbreak that it is. And we join with Carrie in surrendering to you, dear God, her relationship with this man with whom she has been married for 22 years. Surround her with angels, dear God, that her heart might be comforted. And open her eyes, open her ears, open her mind, and open her heart, that she might think most clearly. We place in your hands all of the divorce proceedings, including all financial matters. And we pray that the divorce unfold in a way that is holy, that the relationship itself might be led to calmer waters. Surround her and all those going through this pain. And so it is. Amen. There are others in the live stream, but I'm going to come down, do some of those, and if we have a chance, I'm going to do more. I do want to say to this woman, Edie, who says that your daughter has a job opportunity and you are wondering if you should tell her that you have a gut feeling against it. I have an adult daughter, and certainly I know that as a grown woman now, she makes her own decisions, but if I have a gut feeling about something, I would definitely say to my daughter, honey, I don't feel good about this, just as she, if she has a gut feeling in my life, would say, Mommy, I don't have a good feeling about this. So I don't think parents and children, even with adult children, or even with our own best friends, you don't hold it back if something in you is something in your gut that you feel you need to share. Okay, let's talk about anything you want to talk about. I'm coming down. Who would like to begin? Okay, this gentleman right there.
Hey! Oh, wow, that's loud. I'll be quick, because my question is not about the Course in Miracles or relationships. Actually, it's not a question, so I'll kind of get to it.
But I want to say something. If it's not about the Course in Miracles, and it's not a question, please let the people who want to talk, who want a reflection on spirituality, go first, because we've had a little bit too much of that. I want this first and foremost to be for people who want to talk about spirituality and all of that. Okay, you have an announcement or something? Well, you tell me, and based on what I just said, do you want to talk or not? Okay, thank you. Okay, yes, ma'am.
I was fascinated with what you were talking about in terms of the feminine and masculine and divine feminine. Could you say a little bit more about that?
Years ago, back in the 1990s, I used to go hear Pat Allen religiously, and she changed my life. And I listened to her. I also came to realize that I misused some of that in ways, but that's not her fault. That was me. And I read a lot of books, and because of my generation, and I see the younger women almost worse than we were in a way, that whole issue of the flawed feminist thinking, not that feminism is flawed, but that suppression of the feminine in the name of masculine, and also the generation, one of the things she talks about that I think she's brilliant about has to do with our parents at that time. And you still see it, where she talks about how at puberty it's so important that the mother release the son. And that I remember her saying something like, if you have a 16-year-old son, and he's deciding whether or not to be in a rock and roll band, that the mother should not say to him, well, how do you feel about it, honey? She should say, what do you think you're going to do? And that's extremely important, and that has to do with the wounding of American men that we talked about. Because the masculine, one of the things Pat says, and this is all based on Jungian psychology, and I think there's a lot of profundity to it. She says that a man's greatest psychic craving is that his thoughts be respected, and a woman's greatest psychic craving is that her feelings be cherished. Now, I certainly want my thoughts respected, and a man wants his feelings cherished. But in relationship, there are these dominant themes that somebody on a psychic level, somebody is the dominant masculine, dominant feminine. Okay? So but conversely, not only is it that women continue, with the best of intentions, continue to coddle the feelings of their sons too long and keeping them from real individuation into their masculine. But our fathers, and this was certainly true of me, once again, with the best of intentions, fathers such as mine would tell me how proud he was of my achievements. You can do what any boy can do. I'm so proud of you. And because at the time, that's what they thought was conscious, rather than cherishing my feelings and making me know that I was cherished for who I was. So many women grew up believing if we achieve enough, we will be loved. And that's a scarring, because we keep being more masculine to get love when that's not what gets it for us. It's a state of being. Does that make sense? So, to me, that has really was at that time quite revolutionary. And I read all those books and was very guided by them and realized all kinds of mistakes that I had made. I remember when I don't know how it is now, but I used to go to Pat Allen lectures, and I used to go with this woman We were there every Monday night. And I remember I came to understand why people come to my lectures, because it was kind of like with the Course in Miracles. After you go a few times, you say, oh, I get it. I get what the principles are. But then you realize you got the principles, but living them are kind of hard. And so you come back, not because you didn't hear it, but because you realize how out there it's more difficult. And I remember how interesting it was for me, because at the time I was about 36, 37, 38, and late 30, in there. And I remember noticing how different it was for the women over 35 and the women under 35. For the women under 35, it was like, oh, this is ridiculous. And for the women over 35, it was just, tell me what to do. Just tell me. So that has really guided me, and I have really seen in my life, and most women that I know have.
Is there a specific title of a book by her?
Well, the book, I remember reading that, I don't know, I never was into the, like, how to get married part of it. I'm into the principles of the masculine, feminine part of it. But she did have a book, I don't know if it's still in print, Getting to I Do. But I'll tell you something, and I don't know, you'd have to look up, I don't remember her website, what it's called, but her old tapes, wow. Really amazing. And certain things that I used to just, there are things today I would never say, that 20 years ago I would have said. Like if, let's say this whole issue of a man's feelings being respected. If I was with you 20 years ago and you were reading a certain book, I'd go, why are you reading that? It's so why would you read that book? I would just never say that today, because it shows disrespect for your choices to read that book. And I also would not too often, I mean, I will certainly say, how do you feel about something? But I also came to understand her issue about you coddle the feelings of a boy under 5 years old. And that, what she talked about, I remember her saying that a man, if you mother a man, you want to remember, a man is hormonally programmed to lose his erection around his mother. So you can't be his mother and remain the object of his erotic affection. I mean, we're laughing, but you know, you think about it, right? And so these kinds of principles I always thought were very helpful. But they are close to the bottom line. They are important, but without the spiritual. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Speak to that? Okay. Yes.
Hi, Marianne.
Hi.
I wanted to ask one quickly, do you recommend the official version, the Sparkle version, or the Urtext version of the course? And then I wanted to ask you, you'd commented on the nature of relationships evolving, and I wondered if you had more on that, about how romantic relationships are evolving in this time as you see it.
Okay, I want to answer the first one first, and then I need to ask you a little clarity about the second. I'm a Foundation for Inner Peace person, because Ken Wapnick worked with Helen. The editing that was done at that time was done with her. So that's just my take on that. What was your second question?
You said something just very briefly on stage about the nature of relationships themselves are evolving in this time.
Yes.
And I wondered if you could share more on that.
Well, a lot of it has to do with the fact, particularly for women, there was a time when a woman needed a man materially. Women were not allowed to work. Women were not allowed to make a living. Women, even if they came into the marriage with money, lost it to the man. Therefore had no way to provide for children. And so the basic purpose of romantic relationships was the cultivation of a material context that had to do with the safety of both people, that the woman would be provided for because she couldn't work for herself, and that children be provided for. Well, we have, in the last few decades, that has been so blown away. But going back to Pat Allen, although she doesn't talk about that part, because that's more the spiritual evolution, one of the things she does talk about is ambisexual relationships. And this, I really see the younger people. See, in my generation, we saw people who had done it right. We just lost sight of how to do it. But a lot of younger people had never saw it. And so she talks about how people became ambisexual. Now, what does that mean? Hey, I'm a guy, I'm a woman. You're a guy, you're a woman. And so where do we meet exactly? Well, if we're friends, that's great. But if it's a romantic and a sexual thing, how does that actually work? And so I think for me, I can only say for me, her stuff was very profound that two masculines cancel each other out, two feminine cancel each other out. When I'm in my masculine, he can't be in his masculine, right? And so a real man just won't like it, right? And a weaker man will just have to stay there at the expense of his masculinity. Then I'm like, why don't you be more of a man? And he's like, well, if you'd stop being one, maybe I could, bitch. Right? Right? That's how that one goes down. So you cultivate, everything in life, when the Holy Spirit enters your life, it's, it has to do with your attitudes and your energy and your style and the way you speak and what you say. So then when it moves to a higher spiritual purpose of the relationship, instead of I need you to support me so I can have a house and I can raise a child, not necessarily, although certainly raising children is extremely important within relationships. But that main purpose has moved, like everything else on the planet, to a spiritual one. But even to the extent to which we see our romances as a spiritual purpose, so that it has to do with the fuller self-actualization of both men and women, even then, when it's a spiritual purpose, the masculine and the feminine role still matters. It still matters because if you are a woman, you are majoring in feminine and minoring in masculine this lifetime. If you are a man, you are majoring in masculine, minoring in feminine this lifetime. And the gay makes no difference. The sexuality is different from that issue. And those principles are just as true. So as we move to that this relationship may or may not be about birthing children, but it's about birthing the next best part of yourself, that you become the man you are capable of being. Like I said, it's still procreation. But it's not always about creating children. But even if it is about creating children, it's about you creating the next best you. And my creating the next best me. And then the relationship becomes an adventure. It is a spiritual adventure. And what has blown my mind that I have seen, and like I said, I see it in younger couples as much as I see it in older couples, people don't show up. People don't think it's their job to show up. People don't think it's their job to be fun. People don't think it's their job to plan something exciting today. And let me tell you something, for a woman, as we know, once a woman gets to a certain age, nature doesn't need you to have sex anymore. Nature doesn't need it for the procreation of the species. So if you're young enough, nature really wants you to have high breasts, and nature wants you to have a firmer rear end and stuff, because nature wants to increase the probability a man will have sex with you and the species will continue. Once a woman reaches menopause, you're on your own. Nature could care less if you ever get laid again. What does that mean? You better become interesting. So wherever you are and whatever you're about in your life, one of the things, I read biographies a lot because I learn from I love biographies. And one of the things that fascinates me is that back in days like 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 300 years ago, in Western cultures, where women were not allowed to play any part, as we would see, of power in business, government, finance, and so forth, women, interestingly enough, were more honored for being fascinating. She would be known as a fascinating woman. And these days, men don't have enough of it, and women don't have enough of it. The realization that our greatest attractiveness is the things that we know about and the things that we do, and to bring that into a relationship. So sometimes when I see couples who say that they're bored, the only thing I don't understand is why they're surprised. And this has nothing, and I've seen a lot in my life, and this has nothing to do with how much money a man has. It doesn't have to do with how much money a man has, where he says, guess where we're going tonight? It might not have anything to do with money, but it has to do with an element of surprise. It has an element of, so many times what we're looking for, we don't provide. And we provide it sometimes to other people more than we provide it to the people that we love the most. So I think when we want, it's like a plant, you have to water it. We don't nourish our relationships. And we're also busy asking whether or not the relationship is bringing to us what we want, rather than asking ourselves sometimes, was I the person and did I do the things that would actually stimulate excitement and adventure? The relationship should be an adventure. And that isn't something, that's not part of the dominant conversation in our culture. And I know in my life, bore me and I'm so gone.
Great, thank you.
Does that make sense? Yes.
Thank you, Marianne. There's a lot of what you say about relationships that really speak to me and feels really needed. And I think that as a lesbian woman, when you talk about men are this way, women are this way, women major in femininity.
Not femininity. Feminine, which is different to me than femininity, but go on.
What it feels like
Okay.
are generalizations that don't fit me. For me, all this is so much more complex.
So let me ask you a question, if I may. When you were in a lesbian relationship, and obviously you would know about lesbian relationships in a way I would not. When you are in a lesbian relationship, is there not a sense, because I've had more exposure to gay male relationships. Now, in gay male relationships, I have definitely seen these same principles at work as in heterosexual relationships. Lesbian relationships I've not known as up close and personal. Is there not a sense of someone taking the main generative role and someone the more receptive role?
No.
So it is more ambisexual.
And I'll just say, oftentimes, no.
So let me ask you a question, and if the answer is yes, and you simply taught me something I didn't know, does that remain sexy over time?
I feel like you maybe need to educate yourself about different kinds of relationships.
Well, no, you mean I personally need to?
Yes.
Well, no, I am speaking as a heterosexual woman, so I'm in speaking about my the things I know to people who might be interested in that. It's not incumbent upon me to learn about lesbian relationships, but it does sound to me like it's incumbent upon me, based on what you're saying, to make it clear in apparently ways that I did not. First of all, I did say something about those being generalizations. But also, maybe when I said that these things apply the same to gay relationships as straight relationships, I'm hearing from you, and I now know that sometimes they do and sometimes they do not. It is not incumbent upon me to learn about lesbian relationships, but it is incumbent upon whoever feels moved, who is a lesbian, should they feel moved as part of their work, to take whatever evolutionary principles might be of help within that context and absolutely put them out there.
Marianne, I'm not sure if you're open to hearing this right now.
Okay, lay it on me.
I believe that you're amazing. You've been changing my life for
No, and I
decades
appreciate
and
that. And
decades.
if I've made a mistake, tell me. I just didn't.
I think that if your interest is in creating a space that's welcoming to all people, I think it's good to know as much as possible about all different kinds of people. Just like, can I finish? Just like as a white person, if I'm in a leadership position, I want to know African American people or people of color. I want them to feel really welcome in this. You look
Yeah.
like you're about to speak.
Right,
I want
I
you to
know.
listen to me. I don't feel welcome in
Okay.
this space.
Okay, so let me say what I want to say. This woman asked me, she said, I was fascinated by what you said about male and female.
Do you hear me right now?
Yes, I do hear you, honey, and I totally hear what you're saying. And may I respond, though?
You just, when I'm speaking, you look like you're trying to say something.
Well, no, I was trying to listen. So let me, did you feel, are you ready for me to respond, or do you feel that there's something more that you want to say?
Do you hear what I'm saying?
I'm certainly trying my best. And I do have a response, if it's okay. This woman down there said, I was very interested in the things you said about Pat Allen and male-female. Would you speak more about that? So in that, I was responding to her. I don't know about everything. I'm not here as someone who says, come to my Monday nights because I know about everything. I'm here presenting to the best of my ability what I do feel I know enough about that I can, in integrity, speak publicly. Now, you mentioned African Americans just now. I have had a lot of relationships with and a lot of experience of the black community and so forth. However, there is no way I could ever know at the deepest level what is happening inside a black person.
Of course.
And I wouldn't claim to. Now, I can speak to many things that I've observed, and hearing what you're saying now, what I am learning is that even though what I said before has been my experience, because I've counseled a lot of gay men, apparently what I'm saying has, according to you, no real bearing on lesbian relationships, and so I will say whatever might be relevant to express that I know that. But at the same time, just as important it is that lesbians be heard, and as important as it is that gays be heard and that transgenders be heard, there are also times when straight people can be heard too. And so I can't speak of, I'm sorry if that made you feel not included. Listen, I'm a Jew, and when a bunch of Christians are talking about Christianity, I just get I'm a minority, and this conversation has more to do with them. And inclusion doesn't mean that all of us have to feel included in every little thing, every moment. But if whatever I said, I've certainly learned from this, and I will try my best with my language. But I might be wrong, and maybe you and others can tell me if I'm wrong. I still do not hear what you just said as a reason for me to not share the male-female piece, if in fact that's a question and I feel I might know a little something about it.
I'm not.
Yeah.
Just to give another 180 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
Hi. So I'm also a lesbian. I've been one for a while. And
I saw graffiti once that said my mother made me a lesbian, and underneath it said, can she make one for me too?
I like it. So I totally respect where you're coming from. So just to offer a different 180 degrees is I completely experience flip-flopping of sometimes there's masculine, feminine energy in all of my relationships. Earlier when you were talking, it's completely, regardless of gender and sexuality, those roles flip-flop all the time to me. And specifically in my relationships. I've had partners who are more feminine, masculine, energetically, flip-flopping all the time. So I just wanted to say that for the room. I have some other friends over there that have been like, are you gonna talk? I'll talk. Those girls right there. So respect you. Just wanted to offer another side to that story as well. It's completely universal, what you're saying, in my opinion.
I had thought that more, and
So,
I will
so I'm
be
just
more careful.
wanted to offer that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
I worked with Pat Allen in my lesbian relationship, and she clearly said, one of you is going to have to decide who is going to be the dominant male energy and who's going to be the dominant female energy. And I took the female, and as time went on, it went really well for a while, but I became stronger and stronger, and I wanted to be more male. And it all fell apart because we were both trying to be this very dominant male energy. Now, I'm a lot older than you guys, so I don't know if that has anything to do with it.
Well, let me ask you a question about that. That's fascinating to me. doesn't she say, obviously we're all masculine, we're all feminine, we all want to be those different things, not only in life but in our relationships. But I always thought that her point was 2 years in establishing the dominant pattern, and then you can be free to. Because when you said you wanted to be stronger, to me, for me, that masculine is not stronger. It's just,
I wanted to be more male. I mean, I didn't realize I was becoming more male. But when you said it, when you said we're becoming like men, I don't know how you said it. I don't remember how you said it up there, but you said something that women, I thought, oh my God, that is what happened to me. I started to be more male in my thinking than I really wanted to be. I wasn't even that comfortable, and it just, our relationship has just really suffered for it. I'm more comfortable being in a softer, more gentle, more feminine, but I don't know, I don't know what happened to me. It
seems like you need to go have a session with Pat Allen. There's a lesbian couple here that I'm having dinner with tomorrow night, and I'm assuming that I will be hearing, I don't see you now, but I saw you earlier, I'm assuming I will be hearing a lot from you tomorrow night. Perfect time. Yes, sir.
Hi. So, thank you. And there's some things that you said that really resonate with me. And I'm a member of a 12-step program, and I'm learning that my relationships could use some. My relationships with the world and the people around me could use some work, and that you said there's only one love, and that's the love of God.
Correct.
And that every encounter is a holy encounter.
Correct.
Okay. And that there are no, that all of the people in my life are drawn to me by this divine.
Correct. That's
yes.
the Course says those
right.
things.
Okay. So there are no mistakes in my placement in life.
Okay, no, the Course in Miracles does not say there are no mistakes.
But I'm not finished with the thought.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Sorry. So that the people that come into my life aren't by mistake.
Correct.
And that me coming into other people's lives is not by mistake.
Correct.
Okay. So, that said, and that a relationship exists to foster growth.
Yes.
Okay. In individuals, how this idea of psychic, I know this is really wordy, I'm going to get to the point. The idea of psychic wounds, or where I stumble, you've used
right.
those two metaphors.
Right.
It's hard to see that in other people, to see their character defects, or as a call for love, as hard as I would imagine it would be for them to see
Correct.
Mine as that. So how do I remember? Because what I realized is listening to you is that I have, the only work I have to do is what I'm giving, but not in expecting them to
Correct.
recognize my
Okay.
wounds. Because if that is a mechanism of the ego.
Okay, I've got to sort of get to an answer now.
Let's get to it. Okay. So how do I remember that
Okay.
in my encounters with other people?
Okay.
Sorry.
So the Course in Miracles says that this Course can be summed up very simply in this way. Nothing real can be threatened, and nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. All that is real about any of us is our love. This is what the Course says. And in any given moment, you, I, everyone, is either open and giving love, which is the same thing as saying we are allowing the Spirit of God that flows into us in every moment to flow through us and extend into the world, or closed, not allowing the love to extend into us and through the world. Why do we ever close? We close because of some wound. Something happened, usually in childhood, but not always, to lead us to the subconscious belief that it is not safe for me to be loving here. Now, what I feel as my wound and trying to defend myself from hurt will then come across to you not like I'm wounded. It will come across to you like I'm cold, or I'm hard, or I'm mean, or I'm selfish, or whatever. Now, if you are a spiritually evolved person and practiced in this, you are more likely not to shut down to me just because I shut down to you. But the Course in Miracles says that my experience having shut down, even if you do not extend lovelessness back to me because you are too evolved to do that, I will still feel like you did. So the Course in Miracles says forgiveness is our function. Every day of our lives, the only purpose is forgiveness. The only purpose is to see that if you express to me with love, that my appropriate response is to love you back. If you express to me without love, the appropriate response is to recognize that that was a call for love. So that means that in my conversation with the lesbian woman in the back, if I experienced you as anything other than purely loving to me, which I didn't experience you as unloving to me, I experienced you as just honest with me. But you then said that you did not experience me as loving you back. Did you feel in our conversation, did you feel, the love that you were asking for is that you wanted to feel heard. That was the form of love that you were asking for. And then you told me that you did not receive that from me. So before we're done, have you felt heard by me?
I do more in this moment. You feel more present with me. I think that if you've deeply heard me, hopefully you've heard that I've said that I don't feel as seen or welcome in this space as I think would be ideal. And so then it's up to you whether you take action about that or not.
So I hear that you say that, and it's certainly sorry that, I would never want someone to feel unwelcome here. The Course in Miracles says, in my defenselessness, my safety lies. So I feel like in our interaction, I was defending to some extent, rather than knowing that in my defenselessness my safety lies. So while I remain with my belief that it seems to me okay to discuss things here that don't at any given moment pertain personally to everyone, I will learn from this. I will take with me what you said. I will be far more careful, and most importantly, when I said this applies to gay relationships as well as straight ones, I said that based on my having known enough male gay relationships, but perhaps my knowledge of lesbian relationships up close is such that I should not have said that because it may not be true. And most importantly, I'm sorry if you felt unheard when you had the courage to speak your truth.
Thank you. I
Thank
feel
you.
much more heard and welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We are now, okay, I can only do one more because our time thing on Monday nights is now different than it was. Yes, sir. And I thank all of you for the things that you've shared and the things that you've shown me and shared. Yes, sir.
As an individual and
You want to talk closer to your mouth?
yeah, as an
okay.
individual and also for couples, is it true that the more you go through tough times with the other person, then the more you grow and evolve, and or is it the more spiritual you are, the more things just unfold easily?
So the Course in Miracles says the ego mind is always doing anything possible to disunite us. The ego mind is the mind of separation. So the ego mind will always be saying anything that might tempt us into casting the other person out of our heart. So what happens in ego-driven relationships, and there's an absolutely fantastic section in the Course, and I wish I knew the page because it has this italicized line, here, not this, now. This is what happens. Things come up. You're growing. You're learning. Because what did I say before? Those wounds coming up is part of the purpose of the relationship. The ego mind says, oh, this relationship is obviously not working. Spirit is saying, oh, this is good. Now, if your context is the special relationship, which is, oh, I need you to be what I need you to be. This is not what I signed up for. Then this will be, my ego mind will say, well, obviously, she's not the one. Just go on to the next person. But if my spirit is in charge, now that doesn't mean that every relationship in the realm of form is to last forever. But the Course in Miracles does say that the relationship should last in form for as long as physical proximity serves the soul purposes. And I think many of us have been in relationships where we would say, it's not that I think it should have lasted forever, but it should have lasted longer. You know, that there was more to be done, there was more learned, but one or both people's ego saw the wounding at the time as a reason to leave, when in a sacred container, the spirit might have said, in the place of mutual forgiveness, which is all that either of us are here for, and mutual love and compassion and mercy, we will actually grow from this. Because if you haven't seen a person's darkness, you haven't really seen them. You know, when you only love a person's light, that's easy love, right? But when you've seen a person at their worst, now, in deep relationship, you know, one of the things that I see as one of the most profound things in relationships is where someone tells you they have a problem with something, and you hear them. Or you shared with someone that something's a problem for you, and you could tell they really heard you. And I think that's part of the art of a relationship, is I registered that you said that. I registered that bothered you. And then my behavior is such that you will see in time, I got that. I made a little change, a little tweak. Because we're out to, I might not have known that would bother you or whatever. So sometimes in relation, it's like when a bone is stronger, a bone is broken, then when it gets together, it is stronger when it comes back together. So sometimes in relationships, we're going to even be stronger because we went through this. Sometimes in relationships, this probably means we're not ultimate mates, but there's still more lessons to be learned. In other relationships, you get the sense that there is no further need to even go on with this. But not because of ego, because of a spiritual sense that physical proximity has served its purposes. Does that make sense? And that's why we want to be prayerful in relationships, so that we can tell the difference. You know, sometimes in a relationship, the lesson is stay in here and work it out. Sometimes a relationship is you should not be here. That's the lesson. But there's no handbook on the outside. That's why we pray. That's why we meditate. That's why we do the lessons in the morning. That's why we ask for guidance. Am I holding on out of a codependent neediness, or am I holding on because I see a light there that I'm to follow? Am I letting go because I just am too quick to leave? Or am I letting go because I do not belong here? But other human beings can, you know, the Course in Miracles says the Holy Spirit speaks to you through your brothers. I'm looking at one of my very closest friends right now. And I mean, would I ask, yeah, please tell me, or therapist, or coming to some place like this? But the ultimate answer is what you get in your own heart when you pray, because no one else, that's the voice for God that gives those ultimate answers. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, just very quickly, ma'am, very quickly, just real quick, because we've got to leave the room. Yeah.
I just had a quick comment to what she had said. I understood what she was saying.
Uh-huh.
I understand what you're saying because you're speaking from your experience.
Uh-huh.
But I've been coming to the lectures here for years, as are a gazillion gay women do, and feel totally welcome. So I just wanted to say that
Thank you.
one
That's
point.
very sweet of you to say.
And
Thank
we all
you.
worked on your campaign too.
Pardon?
And we all worked on the campaign too.
Thank you so much. Well, I know how much gay women have given to me, so thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Very kind of you. Okay, so we are going to, I'm going to go up there, and we are going to say a final prayer for tonight. And as my mother would say, God willing, we will be here next Monday night. And I'm sure people all over the world tonight are saying, wow, you know, you go to Los Angeles. Yeah. Never know the conversations we're going to have. Okay, anybody else have anything you need to say? Sir, did you have something you want to real quickly say? Okay, anybody else? Everybody cool? Are we cool? And this lady? Pardon? Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. All right, let's pray. Pardon? Great subject? I think we'll be staying away from it for a very long time. Yeah, relationships are a big deal. Okay, let's pray. Dear God, tonight we pray. We pray for those who need our healing prayers and have requested it. We pray for Sylvia and for Sonia, for Nicole and George. We pray for Maya, for Mary, for Lena, for Porsche, for Rosalie, for Wendy, for Brendan's mom, and for Lydia. Dear God, for all of those on this list, as well as anyone else here with us now who is suffering a physical ailment or disease, place your hand upon them, dear God. Send the divine physician to minister unto them. And we think of any person or people for whom we wish a miracle, a healing. And those of us who wish now say their name out loud. And now we place in your hands, dear God, our burdens, our fears, our anxiety, our depression, our tension. We place in your hands our hopes, our dreams, and our wishes as well. We place in your hands our past, that you might change our mind about it for us, our present, that we might live more fully within it, and our future, that it might unfold according to your will. We place in your hands any decisions we need to make, any questions that we need answered. We place in your hands our relationships, our work, and every aspect of our lives. We pray as well for the state of our world. May all beings be blessed. And now go forth in confidence and in peace, for there are angels to your left and there are angels to your right. There are angels in front of us and there are angels behind us. There are angels above us and angels below. There is a path of light laid out before you that leads away from all darkness. In any moment of fear, remember that you are not alone as you walk this path. Put out your hand for your elder brother, and he shall take it as he would a small child. Remember, this is no idle fantasy. He is here. Dear God, please use us. Make us the people that you would have us be, that we might do what you would have us do. And so it is. We all say, amen. God bless you, everybody. I'm honored that you were here. Thank you so much.